I walked into the banquet hall and immediately spotted the crystal chandeliers hanging from the ceiling like frozen waterfalls. The Grand Riverside Hotel had transformed its main ballroom into something magical. Round tables draped in ivory linens filled the space, each one decorated with tall centerpieces of white roses and gold ribbons. My sister Amanda spotted me from across the room and waved frantically toward a table tucked behind a concrete pillar near the kitchen doors. The table sat in shadow, partially hidden from the stage where a podium stood waiting. My mother laughed as I approached, her voice carrying over the gentle classical music. "Back there's perfect for you, Lydia." Several guests nearby turned to look, their expressions curious. I felt my cheeks burn as I set my clutch on the white tablecloth and sat down. The chair wobbled slightly. From here I could barely see the stage. The kitchen doors swung open behind me, releasing the smell of roasted chicken and the clatter of dishes. I smoothed my navy blazer and tried to breathe normally. The event host, a tall man in an expensive suit, walked past my table. He paused for just a second, his eyes meeting mine like he recognized me. Then he kept walking toward the stage. I gripped the glossy program in my hands and steadied my breathing. "My name is Lydia Whitmore. I'm 33 years old, and I work as operations lead at Caldwell Manufacturing, the local firm that sponsored tonight's fundraiser for children's literacy programs. I came here tonight to support the event, not to be publicly reduced to nothing by my own family." The program listed sponsors on the back page. Caldwell Manufacturing appeared in bold letters under the platinum tier, the highest level of contribution. My boss, Mr. Harrison, trusted me to coordinate this partnership. I spent 3 months working with the event organizers, reviewing budgets, attending planning meetings, making sure every detail aligned with our company's community goals. This wasn't just a donation check. This was strategic corporate engagement, and I built it from scratch. I wore my best blazer tonight, the one I bought specifically for professional events. My hair was styled. I even practiced what I might say if someone asked about the sponsorship. Instead, I sat behind a pillar at the worst table in the room. My sister Amanda leaned close to me, her perfume overwhelming. She whispered with a smile, "Try not to embarrass us tonight, okay?" Amanda stood up and smoothed her red dress as a group of guests walked past our table. She greeted them warmly, touching their arms and laughing at things that weren't funny. She guided them toward the front tables without once mentioning my name or gesturing in my direction. I might as well have been invisible. My mother joined her, both of them forming a wall between me and anyone important. When someone glanced toward our table, my mother talked over me, redirecting attention back to herself. She mentioned Amanda's recent promotion at the marketing agency 3 times in 5 minutes. She bragged about Amanda's new apartment downtown. She showed photos on her phone. I forced a smile and pretended to study the menu card, even though I'd already memorized it. My stomach twisted into knots. The chicken dish suddenly seemed impossible to eat. Around us, the banquet hall filled with conversation and laughter. Waiters moved smoothly between tables. A jazz quartet played softly near the entrance. Everything looked perfect, except for where I sat. The pillar blocked my view of half the room. The kitchen doors kept swinging open, bringing noise and heat. I checked my phone under the table and saw a message from my coworker Nathan. He was here somewhere. Nathan spotted me from across the room and started walking over, his expression brightening. He worked in the finance department at Caldwell Manufacturing and knew about my role coordinating the sponsorship. Before he could reach me, Amanda intercepted him smoothly, stepping directly into his path with a dazzling smile. She laughed loudly, her hand touching his shoulder as she positioned herself as the main point of connection. Nathan looked confused but polite. He tried to glance past her toward me, but Amanda kept talking, asking him questions, complimenting his tie. My mother joined them, forming a barrier. They created a small circle that completely excluded me, even though I sat just 10 feet away. Nathan finally managed to look in my direction, his eyebrows raised in question. Amanda noticed and said something that made them both laugh. I watched the whole performance feeling like I was watching myself disappear. Finally, Nathan broke free and came closer. He leaned down and whispered, "Are you okay?" His voice was concerned. Amanda's smile tightened. She moved closer, listening. Before I could answer, she interrupted brightly. "Nathan, have you tried the champagne? It's incredible." She physically guided him away from my table, her hand on his elbow. Nathan resisted slightly and turned back toward me. "Wait," he said to Amanda, confusion clear in his voice. "Aren't you Lydia's sister?" The question hung in the air. Amanda's smile didn't waver, but something changed in her eyes. My mother stepped forward quickly. "Yes," Amanda replied smoothly, gesturing vaguely toward the back of the room. "She's here somewhere. We're all here to support this wonderful cause." Nathan looked directly at me now, clearly unsettled by the strange dynamic. I gave him a small nod, trying to communicate that I was fine even though I wasn't. Amanda kept talking, steering the conversation away from me and toward general topics about the event and the organization being supported. She asked Nathan about his work, about mutual acquaintances, about anything except why I was sitting alone at the worst table in the room. My mother laughed at something Amanda said, the sound sharp and performative. Nathan glanced at me one more time before being pulled completely into their orbit. My phone buzzed. I looked down at the screen and saw a text message from Nathan that he must have sent before Amanda intercepted him. It said simply, "Are you okay?" I didn't know how to answer that question. An usher in a black vest approached our table, holding a clipboard and seating chart. He studied the paper carefully, his finger tracing lines and numbers. Then he frowned and looked up at me. "Excuse me," he said politely. "I need to verify something." My mother turned sharply, her smile becoming ice. "It's fine," she said with forced cheerfulness. "She doesn't mind sitting here. We already worked it out." The usher hesitated, looking between the chart and our table. His expression showed uncertainty. He seemed young, maybe 20, clearly uncomfortable challenging a guest. My mother leaned forward, her voice taking on an edge. "Is there a problem?" The usher shifted his weight. "It's just that according to this seating arrangement." He trailed off, checking the chart again. Amanda crossed her arms, her red dress bright against the dim lighting. "According to what?" she asked, her tone sharp. The usher swallowed and looked at me directly. He murmured quietly, almost apologetically, "This isn't the seat assigned to Lydia Whitmore." The words settled over our table like dropped stones. My mother's face went tight. Amanda's eyes flashed with something I couldn't quite read. The usher waited, clearly hoping someone would explain. Nobody spoke. The kitchen doors swung open behind us, releasing another wave of cooking smells and clattering dishes. Amanda recovered first, her laugh ringing out across nearby tables. She raised her voice deliberately, making sure people could hear. "Oh, Lydia loves sitting in the back. She's low maintenance like that. Aren't you, Lydia?" She looked at me expectantly, her smile wide and challenging. Several guests at neighboring tables turned to look. My mother nodded enthusiastically. "Exactly. She prefers it this way. More comfortable, less pressure." The usher still looked uncertain, but he was outnumbered. He glanced at his chart one more time, then back at me. I could see him making a calculation, deciding whether to push the issue or just move on. I straightened my spine and met his eyes. Before I could say anything, Amanda touched his arm gently. "We appreciate your attention to detail," she said smoothly. "But we're all family here. We know what works best." Laughter rippled through nearby tables as people picked up on the moment without understanding its context. The usher nodded reluctantly and walked away, still looking confused. I felt something hard settle in my chest. The host stepped onto the stage at that exact moment. Feedback squealed through the microphone briefly before he adjusted it. His voice boomed across the ballroom. "Good evening, everyone. Before we begin dinner, I need to recognize someone very important to tonight's event." My heart jumped. For one wild second, I thought he might call my name. I watched the host pull a note card from his pocket and adjust the microphone stand. The room quieted as people turned their attention to the stage. Even the kitchen noise seemed to pause. The host smiled broadly and said, "Please join me in thanking Patricia Montgomery for her incredible work organizing tonight's event." Applause filled the room. A woman in a green gown stood from a front table and waved graciously. People clapped and smiled. My mother turned to me with a satisfied smirk, leaning close so only I could hear. "See?" she whispered. "You're not the main character here, Lydia. You never were." Amanda nodded in agreement, her expression smug. They both looked at me like I'd been caught in some embarrassing delusion, like I'd been hoping for recognition I didn't deserve. My face burned. I looked down at my hands, at the program I'd been gripping so tightly that my knuckles had turned white. The applause continued. Patricia Montgomery gave a short speech about community support and children's literacy. Her words blurred together. I felt small and foolish. Around us, waiters began serving the first course. The kitchen doors swung open and closed rhythmically. My table received our salads last. A server passed behind my chair carrying a tray loaded with wine glasses. Amanda shifted in her seat, her elbow jutting out at an odd angle. The server tried to navigate around her, but Amanda moved again, this time more deliberately. Her shoulder bumped the tray hard. Red wine splashed across the white tablecloth and onto my navy blazer. The cold liquid soaked through immediately, spreading across my chest and sleeve. Gasps erupted around us. The server stumbled, barely catching the tray before it fell completely. Amanda's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh no," she said, her voice sweet and concerned. "I'm so sorry, Lydia. That was completely my fault." But her eyes didn't match her words. They held something else. Satisfaction, maybe, or calculation. The wine dripped from my blazer onto my lap. People at nearby tables stared. My mother grabbed napkins and dabbed ineffectively at the stain, making soft, sympathetic noises that sounded hollow. Amanda kept apologizing loudly, making sure everyone heard how sorry she was. A staff member in a dark suit appeared almost immediately. She looked at my ruined blazer and frowned. "Ma'am," she said quietly, leaning close. "Please come with me. We'll get you cleaned up." I stood, feeling wine drip from my sleeve. My face burned with humiliation as I followed the staff member away from the table. The staff member led me through a side door and down a quiet corridor lined with framed photographs of the hotel's history. My shoes clicked on the polished floor. We turned a corner and entered a small office where a woman in her 40s sat behind a desk reviewing paperwork. She looked up as we entered, and her expression shifted to concern. "Oh dear," she said, standing quickly. "What happened?" The staff member explained about the wine spill. The woman came around her desk and examined my blazer. "I'm so sorry about this," she said. "Let me get you some towels." She disappeared through another door and returned with clean white towels and a spray bottle. As she helped me dab at the stain, she said something that made my heart stop. "We were told to keep you comfortable tonight. You're the sponsor liaison from Caldwell Manufacturing, correct?" I blinked at her, confused. "Who told you that?" She looked surprised by my question. "The host," she said simply. "Mr. Patterson. He specifically mentioned making sure you were taken care of." My mind raced. The host knew who I was. He knew my role. So why was I sitting at the worst table in the room? The coordinator smiled gently. He wanted everything perfect for the presentation. What presentation? I wanted to ask, but she'd already turned away to get more towels. I returned to the banquet hall with damp spots still visible on my blazer despite the coordinator's best efforts. The wine had left a dark stain that I couldn't hide. As I approached our table, my mother and Amanda looked up. They saw the ruined blazer and started laughing. Not kindly, not sympathetically. They laughed like it was the funniest thing they'd seen all night. Amanda whispered loudly enough for me to hear, "You should probably just go home, Lydia. Save yourself more embarrassment." She gestured at my stained blazer with false concern. My mother nodded in agreement. "Yes, dear. Maybe it's for the best. You've had a rough night." They wanted me gone. That much was clear. They wanted me to disappear before something happened that they couldn't control. I sat down without responding, my jaw tight. My phone buzzed in my clutch. I pulled it out and saw a new email notification. The subject line made my breath catch. "Tonight's run of show, confidential." My hands shook slightly as I opened it. The sender was the event planning company. The email contained a detailed timeline of tonight's program, minute by minute. I scrolled through the list of speeches, performances, and presentations. Then I saw it. My name. Lydia Whitmore, special presentation, key sponsor recognition, 9:15 p.m. Right after dinner service, I stared at the screen, reading my name over and over to make sure I wasn't imagining it. Special presentation. Key sponsor recognition. The words didn't make sense with where I was sitting or how I'd been treated. I looked up at the stage, then back at my phone. Amanda noticed my expression and leaned over sharply. What are you looking at? Before I could pull the phone away, she snatched it from my hands. Her eyes scanned the screen quickly, widening as she read. The color drained from her face. She scrolled down, then back up, her finger moving frantically across the screen. My mother leaned in to look, her mouth falling open slightly. For several long seconds, nobody spoke. Amanda finally handed the phone back to me, but too quickly. Her hands were shaking. She tried to smile, but it came out wrong, forced and brittle. That must be a mistake, she said, but her voice cracked on the last word. My mother stared at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Fear? Anger? Both? Amanda laughed nervously and said again, louder this time, it's obviously a mistake. They probably sent it to the wrong person. But she wouldn't meet my eyes. I tucked my phone back into my clutch and said nothing. Let them wonder. Let them worry. Around us, dinner service continued. Waiters delivered main courses. Conversations hummed pleasantly. The jazz quartet transitioned into something softer. My mother leaned close to me, her voice low and urgent. What are you planning, Lydia? The question wasn't casual. It was an accusation wrapped in concern. I looked at her calmly and said, I'm not planning anything. I'm just here for the event. Her eyes narrowed. She didn't believe me. Amanda shifted in her seat, her red dress suddenly seeming too bright in the dim lighting. She kept glancing toward the stage, then back at me, her mind clearly racing through possibilities. She picked up her wine glass and took a long drink, her hand unsteady. My mother tried a different approach. You know how important tonight is for the family, she said carefully. Your father's colleagues are here, Amanda's clients. We need to make a good impression. I nodded slowly. I understand. So you won't do anything to, she trailed off, searching for the right words. To draw unnecessary attention? There it was. The real request. Don't outshine Amanda. Don't make them look bad. Stay in your assigned role as the forgettable daughter in the back. I took a sip of water and said quietly, I'm just here to support the cause. My mother studied my face, trying to determine if I was telling the truth. Behind us, I heard Amanda whisper something to someone. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was urgent. Scared, almost. My mother's expression hardened. She leaned even closer, her perfume cloying. Lydia, I'm warning you, don't pull anything tonight. Her voice had steel in it now, the tone she used when we were children, and she meant business. This isn't about you. It's about the family, about maintaining our reputation. I met her eyes and saw something I'd never seen before. Fear. Real, genuine fear. She was afraid of me. Or more specifically, afraid of what I might do. Amanda rejoined the conversation, sliding her chair closer. Mom's right, she said, her voice tight. Whatever that email said, it doesn't matter. You need to stay quiet tonight. Let the important people handle things. For the first time in my life, I watched my sister look genuinely worried about me. Not worried for me, but worried about what I represented. A threat to her carefully constructed image. A disruption to the family hierarchy where she stood at the top and I existed somewhere in the shadows. I smiled slightly and returned my attention to my dinner plate. I said nothing. That silence seemed to unsettle them more than any argument could have. As dinner service concluded and waiters cleared plates, I overheard Amanda whisper urgently to my mother. We can't let her go up there. Whatever that email said, we have to stop it. 15, Amanda stood abruptly and grabbed my arm. Come with me, she hissed, pulling me toward the restrooms before I could protest. My mother watched us go, her expression tense. Amanda's grip on my arm was tight enough to hurt. She dragged me through the crowd, past tables of guests enjoying dessert and coffee. We reached the restroom hallway, and she finally released me, spinning around to face me. All pretense of sisterly sweetness had vanished. Her face was flushed, her carefully applied makeup beginning to crack under the pressure. You're not speaking tonight, she said flatly. It wasn't a request, it was a command. I straightened my stained blazer and looked at her calmly. What makes you think I'm speaking? That email, she snapped. The run of show. I saw your name, but it doesn't matter because you're not going up there. I tilted my head slightly. Why are you scared, Amanda? The question seemed to hit her like a slap. Her eyes flashed with anger and something deeper, something old. Because you ruin everything, she said, her voice breaking slightly. You always have. Every time you get any attention, any recognition, you make me look bad. You make our whole family look bad." I stared at my sister and finally understood. This wasn't about tonight. This was about years of resentment, built up like layers of paint. Amanda's hands shook as she pointed an accusatory finger at me. "Remember when we were kids and you won that science fair? Mom and Dad couldn't stop talking about it for months. Nobody cared that I made honor roll that same semester." Her voice rose. "Or when you got promoted to team lead before I even made senior associate. People kept asking Mom about you instead of me. Do you know how that felt?" I'd never heard her talk like this before, never seen this vulnerability mixed with rage. "And now," she continued, her voice cracking, "now you're apparently some big sponsor liaison and everyone's going to know. They're going to see you up on that stage and think you're something special." "I didn't ask for this," I said quietly. "You never do," she shot back. "That's what makes it worse. You just exist and somehow you always end up getting picked, getting noticed, and I'm left trying to explain why my younger sister is more successful than me." Before I could respond, she turned and stormed back toward the banquet hall. I stood alone in the hallway, processing what just happened. When I returned to our table a few minutes later, something was different. My chair was gone, just gone. The table had been rearranged and there was no longer a seat for me. I stood there holding my clutch, looking at the empty space where I'd been sitting. My mother glanced up and shrugged. "We needed the chair," she said simply. I stood beside the table feeling completely unmoored. Other guests walked past, giving me curious looks. A woman in a silver dress smiled sympathetically but didn't stop. The kitchen doors swung open behind me, and a waiter nearly bumped into me while carrying a tray of coffee cups. I moved aside, still holding my clutch, not sure what to do or where to go. My mother and Amanda sat at the table like nothing unusual had happened. They ate their dessert and made small talk with people at nearby tables. They literally removed my seat and acted like I didn't exist. Around the room, the event continued smoothly. The jazz quartet played, people laughed and chatted, waiters refilled coffee cups. I felt like I was watching it all from behind glass, separated from the warmth and belonging everyone else seemed to share. Then a man in a headset and black vest appeared at my elbow. He looked stressed and relieved at the same time. "Lydia?" he said, slightly out of breath. "Lydia Whitmore?" I nodded, surprised. "Yes, that's me." His expression relaxed. "Thank God. We've been looking everywhere for you. Can you come with me, please? You're on in 10 minutes. My mother's head snapped up. Amanda froze with her fork halfway to her mouth. The man with the headset was already walking away, expecting me to follow. I looked at my family one last time. Then I followed him toward the stage. The man led me through a side door and backstage into a holding area lit by harsh fluorescent lights. The sudden brightness after the dim banquet hall made me blink. A woman with a clipboard rushed over, talking rapidly. "There you are. We've been trying to reach you all night. Did you get the run of show?" I nodded, still processing what was happening. She smiled with relief. "Perfect. Okay, so you're on in about 8 minutes right after Mr. Patterson introduces the sponsor recognition segment. You'll walk out from stage left, he'll hand you the microphone, and you'll say a few words about Caldwell Manufacturing's partnership. Nothing too formal. Just speak from the heart about why this cause matters. 3 to 5 minutes max." My hands started sweating. "I didn't prepare anything," I said. "That's fine," she reassured me. "Just be genuine. The audience loves that." Someone handed me a bottle of water. Another person checked the wine stain on my blazer and made a disapproving sound but said it wouldn't show too badly under the stage lights. I heard footsteps behind me and turned to see Amanda standing in the doorway. Her face was pale and her earlier confidence had completely dissolved. She looked panicked. "Lydia," she said, her voice almost pleading. "Can we talk, please?" The coordinator glanced at her watch. "You have about 6 minutes." Amanda stepped fully into the holding area and the door closed behind her. The coordinator moved away to give us privacy but stayed within earshot, checking her watch periodically. Amanda's whole demeanor had changed. The sharp edges were gone, replaced by something desperate and raw. She moved closer to me, her voice dropping to a frantic whisper. "I'll give you anything," she said. "Anything you want. Just please don't go on that stage." I looked at my sister and saw her clearly for maybe the first time. Not the confident marketing executive. Not the favored daughter. Just a scared woman who'd built her entire identity on being better than me. "Why would you give me anything?" I asked quietly. She swallowed hard. "Because I need you to step aside. Like you always do." "Please, Lydia." "Like I always do?" I repeated. "You mean like sitting at the back table? Like having my chair removed?" She flinched, but pressed on. "You don't understand what this will do to me. To my career. To how people see our family." I tilted my head. "What did you tell them about me, Amanda? What did you tell people at your work, at these events?" Her face went white. She looked away, unable to meet my eyes. The silence stretched between us. "What did you tell them?" I asked again. Amanda's shoulders sagged. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. "I told people you were support staff, that you helped coordinate things, but weren't really decision-making level. I told my clients that I was the family contact for any corporate partnerships." The words hit me like physical blows. "You lied about my job?" "I minimized it," she corrected weakly. I made it sound less important than yours. I needed people to see me as the successful one. The one worth knowing. And it worked for a while. People started coming to me for connections and introductions. I built my client base on being the daughter with the corporate access." I stared at her. "So you used my work to benefit your career, then made sure I stayed invisible so nobody would know the truth?" She nodded miserably. "It wasn't supposed to get this far. I didn't think anyone would actually check or that you'd be here tonight. I thought I could just keep managing the narrative." Across the room, the coordinator called out, "2 minutes, Lydia." Amanda grabbed my hands. "Please," she whispered. "I'm begging you. Don't go out there. Don't make me look like a liar in front of everyone." I gently pulled my hands away. For years, I'd made myself smaller to make her comfortable. I'd accepted less recognition, fewer opportunities, diminished expectations, all to keep the peace, to be the easy daughter. Amanda's desperation escalated. She grabbed my wrist, her fingers digging in hard enough to leave marks, her perfectly manicured nails pressed into my skin. "You owe me," she hissed. "All pretense of begging gone now, replaced by something uglier. I'm your older sister. I paved the way for you. Everything you have is because I went first." I looked down at her hand on my wrist, then up at her face. "Let go of me," I said quietly. "Not until you promise," she insisted. "Promise me you won't go out there. Promise me you'll say you're sick or something. Just this once, Lydia. Just let me have this." I pulled my arm free, harder than necessary. She stumbled back slightly, her red dress bright against the stark backstage lighting. Before I could respond, the door burst open, and my mother stormed in. Her face was flushed with anger and fear. She took in the scene, me standing near the stage entrance, Amanda looking desperate and disheveled. "If you embarrass this family tonight," my mother said, her voice cold and sharp as broken glass, "don't bother coming back. Don't call. Don't visit. You'll be dead to us." The threat hung in the air. I looked at my mother and saw decades of conditional love crystallized in that moment. Love based on compliance. On staying in my assigned role. On never outshining the golden child. For a moment, I felt 13 years old again. Small and desperate for approval. Willing to dim my own light just to earn a smile from my mother or a kind word from my sister. I remembered all the times I'd swallowed accomplishments to avoid making Amanda feel bad. All the awards I'd downplayed. All the opportunities I'd turned down because they might create tension at family dinners. I thought about the life I'd built despite all of that. The career I'd worked for. The respect I'd earned at Caldwell Manufacturing. The sponsorship partnership I'd coordinated professionally and thoroughly. Mr. Harrison trusted me. Nathan respected me. The event organizers knew my value, even if my own family didn't. The coordinator appeared beside me. 30 seconds, she said gently. On stage, I could hear Mr. Patterson's voice through the curtain. He was introducing the sponsor recognition segment. My mother stepped closer, her expression fierce. "Lydia, I'm warning you." Amanda's eyes were wide with panic. They both stared at me, waiting for me to back down like I always had. To choose them over myself. To stay small and manageable and forgettable. I looked at them both and made my choice. I stepped toward the stage entrance. Behind me, I heard my mother's sharp intake of breath and Amanda's whispered, "No." The host's voice boomed through the speakers. Tonight's event wouldn't be possible without the generous support of our platinum sponsor, Caldwell Manufacturing. To tell us more about their commitment to children's literacy, please welcome their operations lead and the architect of this partnership, Lydia Whitmore. Applause erupted. The sound washed over me like a wave as I stepped through the curtain and onto the stage. The lights were bright and warm. The room stretched out before me. Hundreds of faces turned toward the stage. I walked to the podium where Mr. Patterson stood smiling. He shook my hand and stepped aside, giving me the microphone. I looked out at the crowd and found my table in the back. My mother and Amanda had returned there. They sat frozen, their faces pale in the distant lighting. I took a breath and began. Good evening. 3 months ago, my supervisor asked me to explore partnership opportunities that aligned with our company's values. When I learned about tonight's literacy initiative, I knew we'd found the right cause. My voice was steady, clear. I told them about the research I'd done, the meetings I'd attended, the budget I'd built. I talked about why literacy mattered and how Caldwell Manufacturing's contribution would fund reading programs in 12 schools. The audience listened. Some people took notes. I saw Nathan in the crowd, grinning. The host stood off to the side, nodding encouragingly. As I finished my prepared remarks, Mr. Patterson stepped forward again. He took the microphone with a smile that suggested he had more to say. Thank you, Lydia. I want to add something the audience should know. He turned to face the crowd fully. What Lydia didn't mention is that her leadership on this project caught the attention of Caldwell Manufacturing's executive team. I spoke with her CEO earlier this week, and they're currently reviewing her for a significant promotion to Director of Corporate Partnerships. This sponsorship demonstrated exactly the kind of strategic thinking and community engagement they want to see at the leadership level. The applause that followed was deafening. People stood. I stood at the podium in complete shock. I didn't know about any promotion review. Mr. Harrison hadn't mentioned it. The host handed me back the microphone. Congratulations, he said warmly. I managed to thank everyone and step off stage, my mind spinning. In the back of the room, I saw my sister stand abruptly. Her chair scraped loudly against the floor. People nearby turned to look. Even from the stage, I could see her face was red. My mother grabbed her arm, trying to pull her back down, but Amanda yanked free. Her voice carried across the room, shrill and panicked. This isn't fair. The words cut through the applause. Conversations stopped. Heads turned. Amanda seemed to realize what she'd done. Her hand flew to her mouth. I stood backstage watching through a gap in the curtain as my sister tried to recover from her outburst. She sat down quickly, her face burning with humiliation. My mother leaned close, whispering urgently. People at nearby tables were definitely staring now, murmuring to each other. The moment I'd feared for years had finally happened. But not to me. To them. I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired and strangely free. The coordinator touched my shoulder. That was wonderful, she said. Really moving. I thanked her and gathered my clutch. Someone handed me a bottle of water. Mr. Patterson found me and shook my hand again, telling me the CEO would call tomorrow. I nodded, still processing everything. I walked through the backstage area toward the exit, avoiding the main ballroom. I didn't want to return to that table. Didn't want another confrontation. As I pushed through the exterior door, cool night air hit my face. My phone rang immediately. I looked at the screen. It was Mr. Harrison, my boss. Lydia, his voice was excited. The board wants to meet you tonight. They're still at dinner downtown. Can you join them in an hour? I looked back at the hotel entrance. Through the glass, I could see the banquet hall glowing warmly. Somewhere inside, my family was probably scrambling to manage the fallout from Amanda's outburst, trying to explain, trying to save face. I got in my car and started the engine. As I drove away from the Grand Riverside Hotel, I realized something important. I didn't need their approval. Not anymore. Maybe I never really had.